Well, Brian, our next topic is something that, well, a few of our viewers say we have on this show, Brian. We have a little antagonism going on sometimes.
No, we don't. We're just playing around. We're trying to have fun. But you know, honestly, we do talk a little bit about some of the disagreements that brothers will get into on the farm, because one's going to think one way, the other's going to think the other way. You got to talk through those things and figure out how you can work together. But unfortunately, we can't make our herbicides talk to each other sometimes. They are going to continue with antagonism just because they are chemically combined different.
Well, and one of the things that I like to focus on is, let's just say that you're spraying conventional herbicides in your field and you've got a broadleaf herbicide and a grass herbicide, and you say, you know, man, I want to save a trip. I want to do this all in one pass. And we see it all the time in wheat, for example, where we'll mix a grass killer and a broadleaf killer. We'll go out and spray, and you know what? The broadleaves die, but the grasses don't. And what's happening is we've got some antagonism between the two products.
But how is that antagonism occurring? There could be a number of different ways. So for example, if you put the products in the tank, the antagonism could occur right there, and the one product could in effect disintegrate the other product, for, you know, to put it into a simple term.
Well, we see that a lot, like on dry beans or in soybeans. We'll spray Result, and you look at Result, it's Basagran and it's a grass killer, that's Post. Well, if you mix those two ahead of time, all of a sudden that Basagran is going to decrease the ability of that Post to control weeds. In fact, they'll put an extra strong rate of Post in just because they know Basagran is going to wipe out some of the activity of some of that Post. So when they sell that product, they'll sell it in two separate containers so it doesn't get mixed until the last possible minute before you're going to spray, because they know there's going to be an issue.
There's another type of antagonism that occurs out in the field once these products are sprayed onto the plants, and I'll just give you the example of Roundup and 2,4-D. This is something that used to be done real commonly. Farmers would mix together Roundup and 2,4-D for burn down purposes. They'd say, oh, this is great, and that 2,4-D really makes that Roundup work better. And I'd say, I think you might want to check that out a little bit, because what we've always found is that you have worse control long term when you put Roundup together with 2,4-D. The reason why is antagonism. The 2,4-D gets into the plant and shuts it down so quick that the slow-moving Roundup cannot get all the way to every growing point and all through a big root system of a perennial plant.
Well, okay, I'm glad you clarified that, Brian, at the end, because when we're talking about that antagonism with that particular mixture, we're talking about perennials. We're not doing as good as we would with just straight Roundup, because frankly, we're going to have 2,4-D and glyphosate pre-mixed coming up on crops, maybe even this spring.
Okay, but it's not just perennials that I'm talking about. There are certain weeds that 2,4-D is not great on, and Roundup might be pretty good. Well, if 2,4-D is out there and shuts that plant down before the Roundup can really get to every growing point, you might not have as good a control as if you're spraying Roundup all by itself.
All right, so we've established there are going to be different antagonisms out there that are going to happen, but how do you know when you're going to have one of these problems? And, you know, after you've sprayed and something didn't work, how do you know it was antagonism and not just a poor choice in herbicides to begin with?
Well, it really comes down to studying the different products out there and working with a good agronomist, because a good agronomist is going to know these things and they're going to advise you up front. But sometimes what happens out in fields is you have weeds out there that you didn't think you had. And so you might go with a Roundup 2,4-D combination, for example, and everything's fine in 4 fields, but you've got one field where, hey, this one weed, boy, that didn't die. And that's antagonism. Well, you didn't know it in advance, you didn't talk to an agronomist about it, and now it just happened. So that's where you have to get the agronomist involved on the back side of things. So what I kind of always think about whenever I'm spraying a herbicide is, am I going to have any coverage? Is the company who made these two products, are they going to stand behind me on this or not?
Well, and in the case of some of these grass and broadleaf herbicide tank mixes, in many cases they won't. They understand, hey, this isn't going to work. You've got to spray this in 2 passes. But it's us as farmers that say, wow, maybe we could save a whole lot of time here if we could just mix them together.
Okay, so what you want to do is take a look on the product label and see if those things are labeled. But the other thing, to take it a step further, Darren, a lot of times they will cover you if you use a higher rate. So if you're going to put Roundup together with 2,4-D, what I will tell guys to do sometimes is put a lot higher dose of Roundup together with the 2,4-D to hopefully help overcome that and maybe get more Roundup into the growing points a little faster and things like that. And then it depends on weather conditions. It depends on spray adjuvants. I mean, there are a lot of things.
That's a key one right there, is the spray adjuvants that you mix in, because sometimes if you're spraying straight with one product, they'll advise use this for the additive. And if you're spraying it in a tank mix, they'll say, okay, hold on, we can't use crop oil or methylated seed oil. Now we have to go with non-ionic surfactant or something that won't push that product in quite so fast.
So really what it comes down to is if you want to avoid antagonism, a lot of times you're going to have to make another trip across the field or pick a product that will kill all the different weeds that you're after instead of having to put 2 different herbicides together in the same tank.
Well, there's certainly a lot of things to think about whenever you're going to be spraying out in your fields, and antagonism is certainly one of those considerations. But another thing could be if you have our weed of the week. Have you identified our weed of the week? It's this year's super weed.